I'll start with the worst crisis, which is ecological crisis. Now, why did I start with that? Because actually that's in anticipation. That's why the Club of Rome was created. But what the Club of Rome did is to say this: if the population of the world will grow at the current rate, if industrialization will continue as it is now, if the use of resources will continue again at the current rate, if, of course, the pollution coming because of the industrialization, a lot of use of energy, fossil energy sources essentially, if that will continue, what will be? So it was not a prediction, it was a simulation. And the prediction was that by 2050, there will be total ecological collapse of the world. Of course, all the economists said, these kind of idiots, to say that predicting such kind of stupid things, etc. But it had a great impact. At any rate, this Dennis Meadows, 30 years later, studied the state of the world then, and actually it was in a worse state than was even simulated in that original report, which means that we are approaching that total ecological crisis faster than even was foreseen in that simulation. There is another crisis of values in the world. And one of the reasons is that the dominant economic system is perverse, because in it a human being has no value. And people are considered simply as human resources, a terribly inhumane term. People should be the alpha and omega. People should be the ultimate purpose of all activities. And instead, because of these kind of economists, if you like, people are worth nothing. They're just resources. Which, by the way, maybe I'll just add one last word and maybe we can move to another topic. When I was trying to teach English, when I was a lumberjack in Northern Ontario, and we were 60 young Ukrainian men, I did not know a word of English, but I had brought with me German English dictionary. And I had to ask one of the native lumberjacks, what does this phrase mean? What is he worth? And that was in November 47, and I still remember that moment. And he laughed at me as if I was kind of a half-wit. And he said, what do you mean? It's simply, how much money have you got? And I said, is that my only worth? No, how about my knowledge, my character, my values, the personality? It's worth nothing? Because this is intrinsic, by the way, to the psychology in the United States. And it came out in that one phrase.
You're talking about those crises, and where to find the solution? Where do you think the solutions are? Where to look for them, and what are they?
Well, the world as such actually needs to shift to a new paradigm. And to shift from, let's say, vicious competition at all levels for everything in everything, and to shift to cooperation, as Japanese are, let's say, from birth, not from birth, but let's say because of their philosophical heritage, religious heritage, etc., they're predisposed to work together, to cooperate, rather than me, and this self-centeredness, individualism. And secondly, we have to also adopt sooner or later a universal declaration of obligations or responsibilities, you might prefer the word, of people towards ourselves. For example, each one of us should look after our health as well as possible so that we don't burden the healthcare budget, if you like, etc. We should be a responsibility toward the family, children to parents, parents to the children, etc. Responsibility to the country in which we are born, but also it can be to the country where you lived or where you did something significant, and really also really responsible for the world in the sense that we should really learn, at least those that are sufficiently literate, about the different religions, about different philosophies of life, and in order to accept this great diversity, which should be the richness, the wealth of this globalized world, rather than being just the source of conflict as it is now.
How is this connected to a crisis? Why by being responsible, and why by cooperating it can lead to solving those crises?
Well, in a way, I'm sorry, but kind of the answer is self-evident. Once we shift to that mode of behavior, once we start actually cooperating, working together, and once we really feel this kind of responsibilities, obligations, there would be no crisis, there would be no wars, there would be, like currently, for example, there would be no this Islamic Republic issue, right? Because Islam is a religion, it happens to be also a monotheistic religion like Christianity, and now the fact that we, the white race, dominated these other, if you like, races, and among them also the Muslim nations, humiliated them in a way. So we can evoke actually some of these reactions, and particularly when this actually Swede in a Danish paper, published these caricatures of Mahomet, and then this Charlie, the idiot in France, also added fuel to the fire that was already burning. If, let's say, they would have actually done something with the Christ, for example, how would we have reacted? So again, by understanding these other religions, these other civilizations, etc., we just would not have this kind of crisis emerging, these stupid wars, this terrorism, etc.
What about the suggestion to focus on economic growth first and only after solving other issues like environmental or social?
Well, it's just a stupid way of thinking and of acting, of course. And that stems again from the fact that there's only one value in the world, and that's money. So, yes, first, of course, we earn a lot of money, and then we'll actually try to heal the damage that we are causing in the process of making that money. Sustainability is not just continuation of, let's say, effective functioning of the economies. Sustainability is actually also social, cultural sustainability, etc. And let me pick on the United States. Self-declared greatest democracy in this world, which also happened to be militarily by far the best equipped, and actually politically strong, because the Americans do believe in that American dream. However, the United States is not a democracy. In a democracy, laws are made, decisions are made in trying to reconcile individual and group interests for public good. That's not at all the procedure. In the United States, it's lobbying. There's some 20,000 lobbyists registered in Washington, but among these lobbyists is a lobby like National Rifle Association, is the richest lobby by far. What do? They give money to anybody to transfer an office. Republican, Democrat, for governors, senators, etc., etc. And they give that, and of course, according to the article of the Constitution, every American from 16 years old can possess firearms. and some of them not just a little pistol, some of them real arsenals. And what happens, well, you've certainly read about that in the paper. Pupils go to their schools and shoot 12, 15 of their colleagues just for the hell of it, as they would put it, or for the fun of it, even something. And some university students do the same thing. Obama tried to introduce some controls over it, but the Republicans were against it, and even actually one of the candidates suggested that actually it should be a law, we should pass a law whereby every student should be going with a pistol armed to university for self-defense. Well, rather than eliminating the possession of these firearms, go prepared to shoot back when somebody comes shooting you. A more important part, that the difference between the poor and the wealthy is by far the greatest in the whole world. Second to the United States is only China. Then let's say 19 other developed countries. There the difference is there, in Sweden for example, but it's only 1/3 of what the difference is in the United States. Now what are the results of it? They're really demolishing results. The greatest proportion of the Americans that are physically ill is by far the greatest among all the developed countries. The proportion of people in the States that are mentally ill, again, is by far the greatest among the developed countries. The cost of health care, surprisingly enough, perhaps, per person is the highest among the countries. The number of people incarcerated in the United States, the proportion of the population, is by far the highest. Now, and to consider that this is a model country, like even unfortunately, we in Ukraine have also considered the United States, and a lot still do, to just know it from one little aspect. For example, they've been to a good university there, and they say, well, it's a great country. Well, the universities are great, but the country is basically sick. So we have to understand that, again, that's one of the problems of the different crises that we are going, this difference between the poor and the wealthy.
So, but then what is the solution and where to find them? And what kind of solution can the world learn from Ukraine?
Well, the solution is in a way very simple. And the wonderful thing happened in Ukraine when they started attacking people on Maidan, that different services were created, medical, psychiatric, educational, etc. Now, why did these people do it? It is not because the government was suggesting it or supporting it. The government at that time, Yanukovych, was totally against it. They wanted actually these people killed, liquidated. They did it out of the sense of responsibility to their fellow man. Why did the first people that went into ATO, they were not yet recruited, they were certainly not paid. They went there to defend Ukraine's territorial integrity and independence, of course, in the process, risking their health and their lives. So it is in Ukraine that this new value has emerged in practice. I did it, if you like, earlier, but started from it more, I would say, by, let's say, from philosophical point of view, from the moral point of view, etc. But this was the practice. So we have things to offer to this world. We have a lot of things to offer in culture, but certainly in this value. We had even a conference here on the 25th of April last year, where the question was, there are several colleagues from the Board of Trustees of this World Academy of Art and Science, where I am, and we had 7 people from Ukraine. And these people were talking about the problems of the world, as you're questioning me about, and the Ukrainians were answering that, well, one of the things that you have to have is actually acting out of the sense of obligation. So we have, let's say, when I wrote, or maybe summarizing there, I said, yes, the world is helping us by putting sanctions against the aggressor, Russia. So I would say the world is giving us silver, but we can give gold to the world, because we can actually share these values, propagate these values. And if these values actually were accepted in that world, the world would be in a much better shape.